you need to have a flow action. Okay, if in case of screen flow, you can see that flow action appears on double click of the assignment sheet. If in case of process flow, you can see that appears on the connector coming out of the assignment. Okay, so there you will configure the flow action in case of process flow. So in case of screen flow, you can see on opening the assignment sheet. So this is a flow action where each and every flow action requires a section. Okay, so this is a mandatory rule for a flow action to configure. So to configure a flow action, in order to appear a screen to the user, so you need a section where you will add the things what you need to display to the end user. Okay, so whatever the things that you need to display, whatever the things that you need to take input, that is something we configure in a section, which is a front end. So in Pega, the front end portion is covered with a rule called sections. Okay, so section comprises of the controls that you want to display to the end user. It contains the controls, and each and every control is a field which is associated to a rule called property rule. So already we discussed about this in our previous session. So each and every property is nothing but a variable to store a value. So the input, we are capturing it. So that input is copied into, set into a variable, and that variable in Pega we call it as a property. Okay, so the fields that we create, it's a property rule, and each and every control which will associate it to a property. All right, so now if whenever you create a section, so you need to have certain controls that you need to place, and each and every control should have type that belongs to which type of input that you take. So here you can see the text input is the format given for the first name. So first name which we are taking the input, it is taking the type as text input. So it's a input text field. Okay, so you can see there are different type of controls available for us to, you can change the control which you have used it. Okay, so the data capture controls that you can see the controls of pickers, you can see the controls of action, data display, and there are few other custom options as well. So the data capture controls that you can see, the text input is one such one, which is taking the single text input. Okay, if you say text area, it is basically a area which you can see as a multiple lines where you can capture the address. Okay, so something like address, if it is there, then you can use the text area control. Okay, similarly, if you want to capture a date, then you will see date time control. If you want to capture the integer, there's a numerics of numbers. If you want to take the input as a number, then you will choose the integer type. If you want to take the decimal values, you can see this option is available. If you want to take the input in the format of a currency, okay, so that is something we can choose this format. So based on the control that you choose, there are certain other presentation options that gets updated based on the type of input. Okay, so based on the type of input that you have taken, based on the input type which you have chosen, so there are certain other presentation options that appears with respect to the type that you have chosen. Okay, so here we can see there are certain currency symbols that we can specify. So you can specify the currency symbol, or you can specify the currency code, something like USD, and you can say currency name as well. Okay, any questions?
No, this makes
No.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
it
taking
makes
the
sense.
data. Yeah.
Okay, can you be on mute, please, Mohidan Baji? Okay. All right, so we can choose certain presentation options that will help us to define and visible for the end users the presentations that you are using it. Okay, so it will append something like US dollars post the text input. Okay, so after your text input is taken into consideration, so it will add this particular thing. Okay, so US dollars are taken into consideration. So these presentation options will help us in defining the input type which you are taken. So there are other presentation options based on the type that you choose it. Okay, so here there are certain different options available in case of the currency option which is chosen. So you can see there are different options available. Okay, so if you doesn't want to display the currency, you can just go for a constant and nothing you can specify over here. Okay, or else you can specify via a reference. So basically the reference is nothing but the property. Okay, so something dynamically you want to set a variable and that variable you want to present it. Okay, so that is something you can specify by using the reference options. Okay, so when you're specifying a reference, it will take some variable, and in case of Pega it is a property. So that property value which is there, so that appears automatically instead of US dollars. It comes dynamically whatever the property is having certain value. Okay, so that way certain places you can see the reference options available. So the reference is nothing but a property. Okay, so that property name you have to specify in this text control. Okay, so whenever you see the reference, it is not something like it is referring some variable which is coming dynamically. Okay, so that is something we need to define before you are coming to this screen. All right, so this references always you need to start with a dot notation. So because it is a property, you want to specify some variable, something like currency symbol or currency name. So this currency name is some property value where it should come dynamically. So we need to set this currency name prior to coming to this screen, and this currency name will automatically populate whatever you set it. Okay, so this is something dynamically referred value. All right, so this way we can help us to derive certain properties, and we can define before you are coming to this screen. For example, there is a property that I am creating right now with a name called currency name is the name of the property. So I'm defining this variable. Okay, and now I am, let's take this as text itself and save it. Okay, and now coming to this, so here I'm taking a new control instead of changing the existing controls. So let's make it as text input itself. Let's take a new control. So let's add a field here, currency. Okay, and here I'm not associating any property here in this scenario. I'm just associating a reference while we are displaying the value. Okay, so I'm just specifying the reference value, how it has to display. All right, so for that I'm using the currency options uh, in the read-only format. Okay, so here I'm specifying this as a reference, and here I'm specifying the currency name. Okay, so I'm defining this currency name which should come dynamically. Now how do I set this currency name? Okay, I will make this as read only, but I need to enter certain input. So for that I will take the input as expected salary. Okay, so I'm taking the expected salary as one of the variable. Okay, so I'm taking this expected salary is one of the property created in the same class. Okay, and I can use this expected salary here. I can specify the label as how you want to display for the end user. Okay, so I'm just giving expected space salary in the label value. So whatever you specify under the label value, that comes on top of the field. Okay, so here you can see, here I'm getting it. Now the symbol is placeholder here. Okay, because the value should be coming dynamically. All right, Now I'm making this as read only because the presentation options which I have chosen, which is being defined here, is read only. For the read only formats, how I need to define it, this particular setting is applicable for the read only format. Okay, so here, of course, this can be an editable format as well because I have selected this option as well. So whatever the format which is selected for the read only, it is applicable for the editable format as well. So for both of these two, I can use the same format which is defined for the read only. It is being taken care here as well. All right. So let's go with this. Now save it. Now I need to have this reference. When I'm saying reference, so reference is nothing but a property which should come dynamically. So this currency name should be coming dynamically. All right. Now where I need to define this, I have multiple places where I can define this initiation. Okay. So here, before you are coming to this screen, I have the flow. Okay, so in the flow you have the connectors, right? So there in this connector, if I open the connector, not here, the process flow, it is available. Let's go to this create, and here under the actions tab you have something called as pre-processing. Okay, so flow action is basically whatever the actions that we define it, it will remain in the flow action. Okay, so you have two options available under the action tab. One is pre-processing, the other one is post-processing. Okay, so pre-processing will define certain rules before you are coming to this section, before you are coming to this screen, what logic you need to apply. So that will be called via a rule called data transform or a rule called activity. Okay, so you have certain rules which will perform certain logics. Okay, so in order to define certain logics, you can utilize any of the rules which are specified under the pre-processing, and on click of next. Okay, what has to happen? That will be called post-processing. Okay, so that means whenever you are creating a new case, before you are coming to this screen, this logics will be called out. Pre-processing logics will be called out. Okay, and on click of continue, the post-processing logics will be called out. So here, whatever you define under the post-processing, it will be triggered as and when you click on continue. Okay, so for now, let's use the pre-processing thing, because when you are coming to this initial screen where I need to define this expected salary and I want to dynamically define the currency name. Okay, so that currency name I can define it dynamically, and that logic I can incorporate via a data transform rule. For now, I'm using a data transform rule to initialize a variable. Okay, so here I'm specifying the name of the rule init, initialization of create form. So I'm defining a rule called init create form, and this is basically I'm going to create a new rule called a data transform rule. Okay, so this data transform rule will help us to write down certain logics, and these logic will be executed before you are coming to that screen. Okay, now that I have executed it, I'm creating this data transform rule. Okay, so the name itself says that transformation of data. So data, any kind of transformation that you can do it. Okay, so something like in Java you have a initialization stage. Okay, sorry, uh, constructor where you can initialize it. Okay, so that constructor is something we can utilize for this pre-processing thing. Okay, so now click on create and open. It is going to create a rule for you. In this rule, I want to initialize a variable. So for this, I can use this action set. Okay, I have so many actions to perform. So out of this, I'm going to define an action set where I can specify the property name which I want to refer dynamically, currency name. Okay, so here I'm specifying as yen, or I can specify INR. So here I'm specifying the currency name, okay, so that it will come dynamically. So this currency name will populate on my text control here. Before you are entering it, I can define. Okay, so here I can define this currency name, and this currency name can be coming automatically. Okay, so this data transform, where exactly it is getting called, I need to save this particular rule as well, because I'm calling this data transform here. So this data transform, once you refer it, and you need to save it. Okay, so what happens, as and when you are calling this flow action, so this flow action will be triggered when, whenever you're creating a flow for the first time, when you're coming to this collect information. Okay, so every time whenever it is coming to the screen, it will be called. Okay, so let's say if I continue, and if I come back again to the same screen, it will again still call that. Why? Because every time whenever you are visiting the screen, it will be auto populated. Okay, so here, as in when I click on continue, and if I come back again, so as in when I'm coming back again, the pre-processing data transform will be called. Okay, so this data transform should be called, and here it should get that value which is referred in this. Let me see here. And create form is correct, and let me create a new one. Now, what did I save this one? Save, right, presentations. All right, so let me try once again. So here we need to have a currency property. So let's go back to the old way of doing. So which is convert to full section editor. Will bring back the original Pega 7 format. So basically, this is going to have certain in the background. This is the how it is generated. Okay. So whatever the design template that you see, it is the Pega 8 generated templates. Okay. Whereas in the older 7 version, you can see this is how it is generated. Okay. So basically, this is using HTML5, and in this HTML5, you have certain dynamic layouts. Okay, so all the things, whatever the controls that you are placing it is coming inside. You need to place inside the dynamic layout. So the controls which you are copying and dragging and dropping it. So you can see the controls are appearing over here. You can see the data capture controls, pickers controls, action controls, and data display controls. Okay, so these are the categories where the different type of inputs that we take it. So those are categorized in these type of things. Okay, so here when you drag and drop certain things, you have this option to select a property over here. So you can specify the name of the property which where the exact value will be stored. So once you take the input, so this is the property where it captures the value. And then under the presentation, you can display how you want to display the presentations things. Okay, so ideally it should be coming with a local currency and other currencies which are defined. So I can specify the currency name which should be initiated. Okay, so anyway, I will tell you the debugging mechanism where I can debug and see why it is not coming. But here you can specify the different type of options. First, let's see the simple one. Let's say if I want to display the dollars. Okay, so here you can simply go and select that particular option where it will display the currency symbol or in this code. Okay, so currency code or the currency name, so that will be appearing by default over here. All right, so this is one way of representing how you are going to display it. So this presentation options will differ based on the type that you choose it. If in case you are going with a currency type, the presentation options are in this way. Whereas if you go for a text control or a date time control, you will see the other presentation options appears. Okay, so where the input that you will choose it, it will take in the format that you choose it. Okay, so let's say if you want to display the date of birth. Okay, so in the format of a date time, and here you have different options available, like you can choose via a drop down list. Okay, and if you are choosing the drop down list, the date you have to pick it up from the in this way. So you have date in the DD, YY, which is in the format of the drop downs. Okay, so this is something like a drop down list which is being populated for the date which you want to choose it. Okay, so this is something easy because the text input calendar is given and you can select the calendar. Okay, so in case of date of birth, most of the forms that you see, it doesn't need to enter the time. Okay, so you can just go with a simple date. So you can select only the date, even though the control has date and date time. It is the one where you can restrict to a date. Okay, the input that you want to take only the date format. So that is something you have that option to select only a particular date. All right, so this way the date of birth, the date options that you can choose it, and the presentation options will also show you the format how you want to display it. Okay, so you have different formats available where you want to apply the way that it represents, so you can use the different options are appearing here. Okay, so if you want to display something in this format, you can always choose the way how it is to be. And this is something you can specify in the read-only format how it has to appear. So you can choose the appropriate date and then you can choose how you want to display. Okay, so this is something for the read-only format. Similarly, for the editable purpose, you can also specify certain settings. Okay, so here by default you can customize the things. Okay, so here the width of the space, so in the customization, in the sense the width which is given, the date of birth width which is given, you can minimize it. You may not require 100 percentage, you may cut short to 50 percentage. Okay, and similarly you can specify the date ranges as well. Okay, so right now the date range which is given is last 10 years only. Okay, so the date of birth you can choose only till the last 10 years. Okay, so you can see here post 2013, even if I'm clicking down arrow, it is not working because this is limited. The range of this date to capture is only till the last 10 years. Okay, so this is something like a presentation options, you need to validate it. Okay, so if that options are not coming, so you need to just see how much range is given for the last 10 years and the next 10 years. Okay, so maybe 10 next to 10 years you may not require. Okay, you want to select only the below date. Okay, so obviously then you may display something like 50. So last 50 years you are eligible to display. Okay, so in this way you can select that appropriate range how you want to display. All right, I'm selecting this option. Let's see, display value using read only formatting, and this format is in this format. Okay, 01 Jan 2001. Let's try this. Continue, back. Okay, so you can see here the format is in this way. All right, so here you can select now the range below 13 as well. Okay, so in this way there are different presentation options, how you want to control that control which you have taken. So that is something, it is up to you. Okay, so similarly you might have this address field which is again the rich text editor, so where you can see the bold, italic, underline, and there are a few more options coming in. So this is a control called rich text editor where you have the editing options available by selecting certain things. Okay, so if you want to include few more controls like copy paste, undo, spell check, and full screen. So you can utilize these options selected as well. Okay, so the more the number of options that you choose, the text editor will become bigger. Okay, so all of these options will be embedded over here. Okay, so here you can see there are so many options are coming for you. Okay, so this way we can customize based on the requirement. Okay, so how you want to display the controls, so you have the lot of customization options available to you, where you can utilize them to how you want to display. Okay, so the presentation options will change according to that. And under the actions you have few action sets that you can use it. So as and when you select it, what you need to do it. Okay, so certain action set you can define, where you can have an options like click, double click, hover, right click, enter keyboard events, and the other events. So on click, what you need to do it, so that is something you can define it. So on click, you want to perform some actions. So there are certain actions that you can utilize it. So these are some of the common performed actions, whereas you can see all actions, where you can see there are other actions that you can use over here. Okay, so this way we can update the actions how you want to what you need to do it on click of it. Okay, so as and when you are coming to the text editor and you are clicking inside this, so that action which you have configured, it will automatically execute. Okay, so whenever you're coming to this rich text and you are clicking, so it should automatically call the action which you are doing it. So let's say if I'm doing the common performed action called refresh, so what happens, it will refresh this section. So the section will be refreshed as and when you click on it. Okay, so here let's see. So in order to see that change, you just need to refresh the screen. So for that I'm going continue and coming back again, so that the screen will refresh once. Okay, so here as and when you click on it, it is refreshing it. Okay, so it is taking, okay, so it is getting refreshed. Okay, so the change is something like on click of it, it is automatically getting refreshed. Okay, so we are not able to see this immediately, but it's getting refreshed. Let's take for some other event. Let's take, create an action set for this, and just for changing this. Okay, so as and when I change the date of birth, I can say a refresh. Okay, and submit, save it. So let's refresh here. Okay, so as and when I change this, so you can see the refresh is happening over here. Okay, so this is something, whenever we are changing it, it is getting a refresh. Okay, so this is not registered for the click event, I think. Okay, it's not getting refreshed, I think. Okay, it is. Refresh is not registered, I think. So basically, if in case the event is, if it is registered, so you can see this event, the clickable event, is not applicable for this rich text editor. So if it is, then you can see that a refresh should happen. Okay, so that way basically you can configure the action events, and based on that action event, whenever it happens, it will call the subsequent action. Okay, so whatever action that we have configured in it, so that action will be performed. All right, so that is how it is defined. Okay, so the actions for each and every control we can define it. Okay, so that actions, based on that action, it will perform. Is it clear?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah.
So is that a rule that the refresh doesn't apply to that cell?
Let's see the on change event, probably instead of on click event. I think on change of some value, it might refresh, because ideally it is not correct also, because for every click it's not correct.